Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whenever and wherever you're tuning in. Welcome to the 5th installment of Free State Sports Podcast. I'm your host, joined by my one co-host tonight, Mike. It's shaping up to be a beautiful evening to dive into the world of sports. How are we feeling tonight?
I'm actually really excited. We got a lot to talk about this week. Saquon is not with us again. He's got some other obligations, but we're here to do the best we can with the two of us. It's pouring its ass off right now where we're at in Maryland, so it's a good day to be inside and talk about sports.
I mean, I couldn't think of anything better to do. Let's start off with our first topic of the night. The NBA Finals finally wrapped up, and when I say finally, I mean it was a pretty lopsided victory for the Boston Celtics. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it was. They ended up defeating the Mavericks in Game 5. They won that series 4-1. They won that final game 106-88 after losing that previous game 122-84. And I started to have a little bit of hope in the Mavericks, and that diminished quickly with the way they performed in this game. Jaylen Brown ended up winning MVP. He beat out the runner-up Jason Tatum in voting for MVP 7-4. Some interesting things I found from that, the finals in general, as well as that last game. Jason Tatum is actually the first Celtics player with 20 points, 10 assists, and 5 rebounds in a finals game since Larry Bird in 1986, which is pretty impressive.
That's very impressive.
Another impressive little stat line, he is only the 6th player since 1980 to win a title while leading their team in points, rebounds, and assists in the playoffs. So, absolute dog Jason Tatum is. And Jaylen Brown ended up beating him out for the MVP. If you look at the stats, Jaylen Brown did start off stronger while Jason Tatum finished stronger throughout the playoffs. So it could have really gone either way. Jaylen Brown did end up beating him out, though. So that was a fun game to watch. I only caught the second half of that last game. I think everybody kind of knew early on that the Celtics were going to take that. Just their defense was far superior than Dallas's was. They say defense wins championships, and there's another example of it right there. Not
to mention their offense was just overpowering everybody in the league.
Yeah.
Before the playoffs started and after the playoffs started. So I'm glad that what it seems like the right team won this year.
Yep, that was my pick. I did pick them because they were the number 1 seed, but I digress. But it was cool that everybody kind of was counting on Luka and Kyrie to sort of be the power duo in the playoffs, and I think they ended up sort of getting outplayed by Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown here in the final stretch. So it's funny how quickly things can turn around, and there's always a better duo or a better team waiting around the corner. So Celtics ended up being the better team in that series.
Well, I mean, the NBA Finals were nothing short of intense this year. Great performances. But on another note, sticking with the NBA, Bronny James has been drafted to the LA Lakers. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding him, and he's projected to go 55th overall and went 55th overall to the LA Lakers, and he will be joining the same organization as his father, LeBron. How do we feel about that?
Yeah, I don't think LeBron has officially accepted a contract yet. He has stated that he's not looking to play out the final year on his current contract. Instead, he wants a brand new contract, and the Lakers have said that they're prepared to offer him a full max contract for, I believe it was a 4-year deal. I don't even have it in my notes, but I think it was a 4-year deal for around $165 million or something like that. Lakers said they were prepared to offer him that max deal. He has not officially accepted it yet at the time of this podcast, but I think it's pretty obvious, pretty apparent that him and Bronny James are likely going to end up playing alongside each other, which I don't think I've ever seen a father-son duo in the NBA, at least in my time, and since I've been watching sports, so that'll be fun to watch.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And I want to say with great surprise this happened, but, I mean, let's be honest, every analyst on the planet was projecting Bronny James and LeBron James ending up at the same team.
Yeah, and I think the Lakers were obviously the most likely scenario, so.
Yeah. All right, while we're on the topic of basketball, let's discuss recent developments with the women's Olympic basketball team. They decided not to name Caitlyn Clark to the team. What are our thoughts on this?
Well, according to Inc.com, the selection committee chair, Jen Rizzotti, explained that Caitlyn simply doesn't have the right skills to compete at the Olympic level. While she's certainly talented, the international stage comes with some different pacing and strategy, albeit the same game. There's also an aspect of meshing a team together to play to different strengths and weaknesses. So she respects Caitlyn and all she's done for basketball, but she's basically saying that there are better athletes out there. And I did do some research. Here's a name you may be familiar with for somebody that did make the U.S. women's Olympic basketball team. Brittany Griner made the U.S. women's basketball team, and I did a little bit of deep diving into their stat comparison, and I gotta be honest, I didn't expect Caitlyn to be so far behind Brittany just because of the impact that Caitlyn has had on women's basketball. But Caitlyn has over her last 19 games, I believe, she has a field goal percentage of 40.1%, while Brittany Griner over her last 7 games has a field goal percentage of about 60%. Brittany averages about 19 points a game, and Caitlyn averages about 16 points a game. Brittany's pretty much beating her out in every category, just as sort of an in-depth look at the type of talent that they have on the Olympics team. So upon doing that research, I don't think it's too surprising that she didn't get picked. I think at first glance it was stunning just because she's arguably the biggest name in women's basketball right now, alongside of Angel Reese. Obviously, those two have done a lot of good for women's basketball, and I look forward to continuing to see them hopefully make some changes for women's basketball. So not too surprising that she wasn't picked looking at the stats, because obviously they're not going off of impact. So I'm really not that surprised.
No, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, she's top 5 in every statistical category, and she is the current front runner for Rookie of the Year. But she is a rookie. We don't have that tape at the professional level that is needed to make this split-second decision. And I know she took it very well. Caitlin Clark took it very well and says that she hopes she's going to be on the team 4 years from now. And I hope so too. Her performance this year has been nothing short of stellar, as just completely blowing out the other rookie class. But I don't know if you did know, but the 3x3 women's basketball team recently had suffered 2 key injuries to their team.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, so questions started getting raised throughout the sports universe, asking whether or not Caitlin Clark can step into that position, and it's been determined that no, she cannot. For the simple fact that you need to have competed in 3x3 on some sort of professional level and have been top, I believe it's a top 10 team in your state or your country, and she doesn't meet the qualifications.
Right.
Yeah. 2 players ranked within the top 10 of their country.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, seeing all that she's done for the game, but obviously you got to look at the stats and the performance. When you really break it down, it makes sense that she wasn't selected, so it is what it is.
And that quote, I had that quote in here too. To roll into the next topic, we're going to quickly swing over to the NFL. Well, it was funny, off podcast, we were having a talk how this was one of the most boring weeks in the NFL up to this point. There hasn't been any major contract signings or anything. And then the NFL lost a very major lawsuit, the NFL Sunday Ticket lawsuit. You may have heard of it. What went into this lawsuit exactly, Mike? So
this is basically about their Sunday Ticket service. This is from NewYorkTimes.com. The NFL must pay almost $5 billion in damages for artificially inflating the price of Sunday Ticket, a subscription service offered by DirecTV that showed out-of-market games. A federal jury in Los Angeles decided this past Thursday.
And YouTube, by the way. YouTube TV also offered Sunday Ticket.
Yep. The verdict, which capped a month-long class action trial and almost a decade of legal wrangling, includes about $96 million in damages for the bars and restaurants that subscribe to the service, more than $4.6 billion for roughly 2.4 million residential subscribers. Damages in antitrust cases like this are tripled by law, which means the league may have to pay more than $14 billion. The NFL is expected to appeal this verdict. They said that they're disappointed with the verdict and they feel that it is baseless and without merit. So they're going to go ahead and appeal it. One thing I found, sort of looking into what that means, is basically the league broke antitrust laws by selling Sunday Ticket at a certain period only on DirecTV and at an inflated price, and by offering a service only on one distributor with a high price. That limited subscriber base and satisfied concerns by CBS and Fox about preserving the local ratings, while the NFL got a ton of money for its broadcast rights. So lot of corporate greed from the NFL's side on that.
Yeah, well, I'm not a legal expert, but what I will say is this might look like a win for the consumer fans, but it's a loss. The NFL will have to pay out of pocket if pending the appeals, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a lot of money, which is going to be implemented in how much you're paying for price tickets and what you're losing, etc., etc. I'm not supporting the NFL, but I am saying there could be changes coming to pricing that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for the average fan to get down and watch a game.
Yeah, I think the fallout from this is going to be very interesting to follow. I don't think, at least to my knowledge, I haven't seen a lawsuit this big for a mega company like the NFL in quite some time, so we'll see how that appeal goes, but definitely an interesting thing to keep track of over the next couple of weeks, few months.
Speaking of tough decisions, though, because that was a tough decision for the jury to make, and it's even tougher as a referee during a live game to make a decision. So that raises a question, should we allow coaching staffs to challenge anything? Like, I mean, any call, it doesn't matter if it's a potential holding call they thought they saw, just any call, should it be allowed in the NFL?
Well, here's how I feel about it. I feel that ability might slow down the game a little too much. I am open to increasing the number of challenges or restructuring how all that works altogether. We've seen a lot of restructuring different aspects of the game recently in the NFL. We talked about some of that on our last podcast. But we do see the officials hold far too much power far too often, and I think that often results in critical outcomes during those tight games. Like, for an example, I think everybody that watches football probably remembers that pass interference call in the Saints-Rams conference championship game back in 2019.
Absolute game changer.
Yep, that resulted in the Saints losing that game 26-23 in overtime. And ultimately, if I'm not mistaken, I think the NFL after that game made it so that you can challenge pass interference calls.
They then recanted that the following season. So it only lasted one season. And we were seeing very blatant and obvious pass interference not get overturned because it was left to the discretion of one referee, not even at that stadium, who blatantly basically said that I will not be overturning these calls. Now, when I raise this question, I'm not suggesting that we raise the number of challenges. I believe that we're pretty good at sitting at 2 challenges, and you can earn a 3rd challenge if you get both challenges correct. I believe the rules on overtime challenging might be up for a little adjustment. Maybe we allow, not overtime, but 2-minute warning in overtime, because as you know, all challenges happen in the booth. So with that being said, I think that maybe we allow for 1 challenge to happen, right? And it'll count towards your normal 2 challenges, but you only get 1 challenge in the last 2 minutes of a half or the game, and 1 challenge in overtime.
Right.
I think that this would be a great situation to implement in the playoffs. The playoffs have the highest stakes besides the Super Bowl, and we saw a lot of things get implemented in the playoffs, like the overtime rules got implemented in the playoff. This could improve upon the game. It could honestly save referees, because people are already talking about moving on from the traditional referee. So I would like to see adjustments to the challenging, but I don't know how we would get to the point where we're allowing everything to be challenged. It would bog down the game.
Yeah, I think also even when you challenge things, the referees still sort of hold that power in one way or another.
That's fair, yeah.
I think if anything, we're due for, I don't know, for a while I've been saying they've needed to get some better referees, or increase training or whatever that needs to be done to make the officiating better, because it's just so inconsistent across the board. It sucks that because and we're going to talk about our thoughts on playoff wins in a little bit here, but for an example, it also, what that does is it allows, like the NFL isn't like MLB or the NBA where there are series, right? Like it's 1 game per week for each team. So it's not always that the best team wins, and I think in those tight situations, it's important to have, solidified officiating, like legitimate, consistent officiating. Otherwise, you're not really always seeing the best team win. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement there. Yeah,
there should be no room for ref ball in the NFL, period.
Yeah.
As you brought up our next topic, when we're assessing best players in the NFL, several factors come into play. Traditionally involved accolades like, individual accolades like MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and that would highlight the player's exceptional performance. I feel like with the recent success of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, we're moving away from this, and it's becoming more important as a quarterback to win in the playoffs when it matters. I mean, with Patrick Mahomes traditionally being the player in the Super Bowl nearly every year now, I mean, he's in the Super Bowl more than he's not. Are the playoff wins becoming the new benchmark for becoming a good quarterback in this league?
Well, I think to an extent they are. It'd be hard to argue against that. You made some valid points about some of the best in the game, Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes. You look at how many rings Tom Brady has alone, and I think the whole end game result, both as a player and as a team, is to win Super Bowls. So I think that's still the ultimate determining factor, but I think that there's a lot of things that often get overlooked. At the end of the day, football is a team sport, and I think people do lose sight of that. If you take Patrick Mahomes and you put him on, let's say, the worst team in the NFL, whoever that might be, I don't know, the whoever was dead last year, who was it, the Jaguars or...
Oh, last year?
Yeah.
That was the Panthers. Who lost their first overall pick.
If you put Patrick Mahomes on the Panthers, I think there's a good chance he's still phenomenal, but I don't know if he wins playoff games with the Panthers. So I think it's important to remember that football is a team sport at the end of the day, and I think it does. Playoff wins do sort of show you who the best overall team is. As an individual, I think it's still a measuring stick, but I don't think it's the measuring stick. I think you have to sort of take a deep dive and look at what players those quarterbacks have around them, because even guys like Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes, a lot of times they're made by the team they have around them. That's a point that you brought up to me off podcast a few months ago. We were having a conversation about something. It's every quarterback every great quarterback throughout history has had great weapons to work with. So I think, especially at the quarterback position, you have to really, if you're talking about whether playoff wins make them great or not, you have to look at the whole situation in the grand scope of who's around them and what that team looks like. So I think my answer in short would be that they matter, but they are not the only determining factor as to whether a player is great or not.
Yeah, no, I'm actually right there with you. I think it's important to weigh consistent playoff success with individual accolades, right? If you have a player winning MVPs and Super Bowls, like Patrick Mahomes, they obviously can be regarded as one of the greaters in the game. But when you have players that don't necessarily put up a great statistical season, squeak by and make it in the playoffs, like a Daniel Jones did with the Giants, or even a Eli Manning, which nobody wants to give him his dues. He won 2 Super Bowls. But regardless, we also see these outliers like Blake Bortles when he got Jacksonville to the AFC Championship game. Blake Bortles, by no means, is a good quarterback in the NFL. There's a reason why he became a career backup. But he was able to get there with a really good Jaguars defense. Are we going to consider Ryan Tannehill a great quarterback? Because he had very good playoff success beating Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady in the playoffs, but ultimately losing to Kansas City. Are we going to consider Mark Sanchez a good quarterback, Mr. Butt Fumble himself, who made it with the Jets to the AFC Championship game? No, I mean, their career statistics just aren't there. So overall, yes, you need playoff success to be a great quarterback, but you also need regular season success to maintain that great quarterback status.
Yep, I agree.
While on the topic of playoffs, let's try our hand on a way too early division winner prediction.
I'm excited about this. This was fun to dig into and research.
Yeah, so the way I listed it off is starting off with the North, West, East, South from both. So starting off with the AFC North, who do you have?
I'll tell you who I got, Andrew. I got our Baltimore Ravens. Now let me explain. Let me explain. Hold up. I think despite having the second toughest schedule in the NFL this year behind only the Browns, I think they have really all the same tools they had last year, minus a couple losses they had on the defense. They lost Patrick McQueen, they lost Geno Stone, they lost a couple key players over there. but I think they'll be just fine. The Ravens are sort of known for remaining consistent from year to year, so I don't think they'll have any problem adjusting. They got the addition of Derrick Henry in the backfield. That'll bring a new level of explosivity along with returning breakout star whenever he returns. Keaton Mitchell, I think, is flying under a lot of people's radar. If you watched any Ravens games, that guy in it, deadly speed. And then you got Lamar Jackson, you got Andrews, you got Flowers. You have probably, in my opinion, the most explosive offense in the NFL, at least on paper. Defense in Baltimore has obviously never been an issue. You've got Roquan over there. You got Justin Madubuike. Got a bunch of key players on defense still.
Kyle Hamilton.
Yep, Kyle Hamilton.
The best safety in the NFL.
And I would argue that those three is one of the top three.
At their positions, yeah. I mean, Justin Madubuike had a breakout season last year. He led defensive tackles in sacks. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important detail that is overlooked by the greater football community.
Yeah, I think those three together is one of the most deadly tandems in the NFL. So I'm not worried about the defense at all in Baltimore. And I think the offense, with the new addition of Derrick Henry and some healthy returning players, Lamar's obviously always a game changer. I think AFC North is going to be very, very competitive this year, as it usually is. But I still have the Ravens winning that division.
No, I'm actually right there with you, surprisingly. I mean, I picked the Ravens, too. Holy crap. Two Ravens fans picking the Ravens. No, I wanted to highlight the biggest change in the AFC North this year was the Steelers going out and getting two new quarterbacks. This could help elevate the Steelers squad. I mean, they're going from Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph to, and can't forget Mitch Trubisky. He won an MVP.
I'd like to forget him.
Yeah, so that was the biggest change, and it's always hard for that new quarterback to always take off in the AFC North because they get bullied. I don't think Russell Wilson has ever beaten Lamar Jackson.
I don't think so. He's very rarely faced off against him, and I think
they had two, one with the Broncos and one with the Seahawks.
I don't know how well he'll do over there. AFC North it's a different division.
But alternatively, I mean, I just props where props is due. I saw an article today talking about how Mike Tomlin has spoken about Russell Wilson's performance in in practice and everything, and says that he's liking what he sees out of Russ. So if he continues doing that, they're looking to reach a long-term deal with Russell Wilson. I mean, that's excellent news. I hate the Steelers, but I respect them as a team, and I respect Russell Wilson as a player. Right. So if he can rejuvenate his career in Pittsburgh, I would love for them to bring the best quarterback they have to the table. Moving on to a very hard one. I have the AFC West, and I just couldn't figure out who could win here. So who do you got?
Well, I got the Chiefs.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious and apparent to everybody that Chiefs are still the Chiefs. I don't think they really had any big losses this offseason. They didn't have too many additions. They don't need them. I think it's going to be hard for anybody in that division to be on the level of the Chiefs. Now, we did see them struggle early last year. Still ended up winning a Super Bowl. So, I just don't see the Chiefs getting beat in that division.
That's a fair point. I also had the Chiefs. Obviously, I think the biggest question mark is surrounding Justin Herbert and the Chargers, with the Chargers recently bringing in, I believe it was Jim Harbaugh, right? That he went to the Chargers? Yeah. Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he did great with Colin Kaepernick. He's a great head coach. He did great in Michigan. What can he do with Justin Herbert to help Justin Herbert reach that level of playoff success? I believe he's played in one playoff game and lost to the Jaguars.
You got two new running backs over there, too, that both used to be...
J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Yep. So I think that's the biggest question mark. But even with that, because Justin Herbert was unhealthy last year, he got injured. But even with a healthy Justin Herbert, they've never been competitive against the Chiefs. The Chiefs run away with the division every year. I think they're going to run away with the division this year. I think the safe option is the Chiefs here.
Yeah, I would agree. I just, I don't see any way that it ends any other way in the AFC West.
All right, continuing on to the AFC East. Who do you have?
I have the Dolphins winning that division. That's going to be a tight contest, I think, with Buffalo. I ended up going with the Dolphins. They both finished at 11-6 last year. The Dolphins did re-sign Jalen Waddle recently. They picked up Odell. They remain to have one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. I think right alongside my argument for the Ravens, I think that's a very explosive offense. And I think that, again, it's going to be tight with Buffalo, but I think we're sort of seeing the Dolphins. The Dolphins seem to be set up in a better position for success than Buffalo does, in my opinion, going into this year, at least right now.
You know, I thought I picked controversially. Miami and Buffalo had the same record last year. Mm-hmm. Miami worked hard to improve their roster. Tua is going into a contract year, and he's going to be balling out. I think Tua can lead these Dolphins to a stellar season and finish maybe as a 3 or 4 seed. But I do have the Dolphins winning the division by shock.
Yeah, I don't think I bet against a team that's you've got Waddle, you've got Hill, you've got Odell, you got Tua.
Can't forget about Achane,
yep.
who is a stellar running back.
Yep. So, I mean, they got all the tools they need over there. Buffalo lost Stephon Diggs, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think they got a adequate wide receiver to replace him. And I'm not trying to downplay how good Josh Allen is, because I think Josh Allen is a top 5 quarterback in this league. Mm-hmm. But just because you're the top 5 quarterback doesn't mean you can carry your team to 6, 7, 8 wins. I mean, 6, 7, or 8 wins that would be required to win this division. Unless the Bills can reach on a trade for someone big, like a Brandon Ayuk or, I don't even know who they could get. But unless they can reach on a trade for a good wide receiver this year, I don't see them winning this division. I see them being playoff bound regardless.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, AFC South, who do you have there?
I got the Texans winning that division. C.J. Stroud showed us a lot of impressive stuff last year. I think he's set up for a very big second year. And we just talked about the Bills losing Stephon Diggs. He's over there with C.J. Stroud now. So who else do they have at wide receiver? They have somebody else I'm forgetting, some other big name over there.
They have a lot. So they have John Menchie. I know that.
Tank Dell is the other guy.
Dell is absolutely... I mean, he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver this year. I can feel that.
Yeah, that's a solid offense over there, too. I don't think it's quite on the level of a Miami or Baltimore.
Cool.
Damn.
Regardless, C.J. Stroud was able to make the playoffs with a similar offense last year.
Yeah.
So I had this pretty close. I want to see what Anthony Richardson and the Colts can do. Mm-hmm. But I have to give it to the Texans straight out of the gate.
Yeah, I agree. I think C.J. Stroud's going to do some big stuff. I think he's ahead of his time, really, for where he's at in his career. I think he's going to have a really successful career. So I'm excited to continue to watch him play.
All right, moving on to the NFC. The NFC is going to be much tighter than the AFC. We have the NFC North. Who do you have?
I actually picked a dark horse here. This might be a little controversial, and I'm going out on a limb. I went ahead and I picked the Chicago Bears to win that division. I think whether Caleb Williams ends up being a stud or not remains to be seen, but clearly the team believes in him. They were quick to name him the starter. Some of his teammates have come out to defend him amongst all his criticism he had for the early struggles he had in, OTAs, I think. He has Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and DeAndre Swift over there. Again, a really potent offense. I think their defense remains to be tested, but they do have a few playmakers like Montez Sweat that they went out and traded for, I think, either last year or the year before. They got Tremaine Edmonds. They got time to add a few more pieces in if they can. They finished way ahead of the Lions in total defense in 2023. I think Jared Goff could be set up for another post-big contract bust like we've seen before. We talked about that when we talked about his contract.
I actually got that in my notes, not going to lie.
Yeah, so dark horse, but I went ahead and I picked Chicago.
I also went with the dark horse team here, and I said, truly not going to lie, this is the weakest we've seen the NFC North in a while. I mean, since Aaron Rodgers has been running it. I mean, we saw Kirk Cousins move on from the Vikings. That's going to hurt the Vikings a lot. I don't know if J.J. McCarthy can put up the same things that Kirk Cousins did 2-3 years ago.
Right.
I'm excited to see if he can recoup the Vikings and make them good again. The Bears moved on from Project Fields. Is Caleb Williams going to be able to elevate this offense to a level that Justin Fields couldn't? Maybe. I think Jared Goff is going to regress this year. So I have Jordan Love, who put the league on notice last year with a stellar last half of the season performance. I think he's going to perform well all season, and the Packers are going to walk away with the division.
That's a solid bet as well.
Moving on to the NFC West. This one might be a little hard.
I got the 49ers to win the NFC West. I think there's no significant moves over there, sort of similar to the Chiefs' pick for their division. I think there's not really any moves in that division that would suggest anything other than that powerhouse offense and top 10 defense from last year to come in and do the same thing again. So I think the 49ers remain on top in that division.
Yeah, this one was a gimme. I mean, the 49ers dominated the NFC in general last year.
Yeah.
Are we going to expect them to fall off from that domination? No. It's a pretty safe bet that Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy are going to carry this offense to another. Oh, and you can't forget about their defense, which is just Fred Warner and Bosa. It's just, they're a great team. What can you do about it? They run the NFC West, and if you want to be a good team in the NFC West, you got to beat the 49ers, and they're not. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Moving on though to the NFC East, a little more controversial one. Who do we have there?
This one was tough. NFC East, at least the two top dogs in that division could flip-flop either way. I have the Eagles just barely squeezing by the Cowboys this year. I think they drafted notably the best corner. We talked about the draft breakdown in our first episode, I think that was. We talked about my favorite pick, Quinyon Mitchell. He's going to be pairing with Darius Slay over there. It's a really good defensive back. I think they have an offense full of potential. If Jalen Hurts can minimize turnovers, I think it's going to come down to the play of Jalen Hurts. Threw 15 picks to 23 touchdowns last year, more than double the previous year that he went to the Super Bowl. I think if he plays up to his full potential and if that offense plays up to their full potential, and again with the addition of Quinyon Mitchell pairing with Darius Slay over there, solid secondary, solid offense, I think they take the NFC East.
Yeah, so one important statistic, and this is just one of them fun statistics that really have nothing to do with nothing, but they have something to do with this. The NFC East hasn't had a consistent winner in, a decade? Mm-hmm. So I also picked the Philadelphia Eagles here. And I think it's going to be close, like last year, but I don't see Philly collapsing in on itself like they did last year. They have a better defense than they did last year. As you mentioned, they brought in that new cornerback in the draft. I think Philly has what it takes to barely squeeze by and beat out the Cowboys here. I do have the Cowboys making the playoffs, but they're going to be a wild card team.
Yeah, I would agree.
And then finally, last but certainly not least, the ever elusive NFC South. This was probably the hardest one.
Yeah, this one was tough too. I picked the Falcons to win that division. I think the new addition of Kirk Cousins paired with some untapped potential in Drake London and Kyle Pitts, deadly combination over there, and I think they could end up very well, could outplay Baker Mayfield, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans over there. Despite having more proven talent, the Bucs only finished 2 games ahead of the Falcons in 2023. Falcons also finished way ahead in total defense in the top 11, while the Bucs, who were second in that division, they finished bottom third in the division in defense. So I think the Falcons are going to take that division. I think Bucs will probably be runner-up, but I think the Falcons are set up for better success over there.
Yeah, you pretty much said everything I had. I mean, the addition of Kirk Cousins, they have a stellar offense with Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I think the Falcons are destined to win the NFC South this year. All right, well, that brings us around to our WWE portion, and the WWE has blasted onto the scene the last couple weeks with back-to-back blockbuster weeks between all 3 brands of NXT, SmackDown, and Raw. But before we dive into that, let's take a quick moment of silence for a loss of a Hall of Famer.
Sika Anoa'i. This past
Hall
week,
of Famer and father of Roman Reigns.
Yep, Sika Anoa'i passed away this past week.
Sika Anoa'i.
Yep. And that's a tough loss for the WWE world. He was, like you said, one half of the Wild Samoans with his brother Afa Anoa'i. That Anoa'i family is obviously part of that Samoan dynasty over there in the WWE, so that's a big loss. Obviously, Roman Reigns, huge name in wrestling right now, as well as, you know, all of that whole Samoan family. So that's a big loss, and definitely one we felt when that news broke.
So like I said, let's take a quick moment and revel in his amazing contributions inside and outside of the ring. And with that being said, let's talk about some wrestling. A major announcement sprung up, last week?
Yep.
The city of Indianapolis will host all three of the major WWE premium live events, starting with the 2025 Royal Rumble. This includes a 2-night SummerSlam event and a WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think Lucas Oil Stadium is one of the most highly touted stadiums, especially in football, but really in the sports world in general. Obviously, with Pat McAfee having ties to the Colts and being with the WWE now as a commentator, I think that sets up something really cool. There's a lot of history there. I think Indianapolis is a really cool sports town. Obviously, as a Ravens fan, we kind of hate the Colts, but I think it's a cool little sports town over there, cool wrestling town as well. So I think that's the first time we've seen something like that, where they've announced that 3 big events like that are going to be held there in the same year.
That is most definitely the first time I can remember.
That's another move by Triple H that, I mean, I don't know how to really, how to receive that. I have no doubt they'll be good, but...
I mean, what I do know is Indiana is a home of some of the greatest sports, I wouldn't say entertainers ever. I mean, sure, Peyton Manning might have been a football player, but he was entertaining as hell to watch. Pat McAfee, one of the most entertaining, he's a WWE commentator.
Philanthropist.
He
does everything.
He's a podcaster. He used to be a punter for the Colts. He just does it all. And I think this is very exciting. Obviously, Indiana had to spend a lot of money to bring all 3 events there. But I mean, the WWE's been going strong. This is going to be great for the city and great for the company.
Yeah, I love those stadium premium live events as well.
Oh, yeah.
I love when they do events in big stadiums like that. And that shit goes to show you that WWE's right back on top. I mean, they're red hot again, just like they were back in the Attitude Era in those days. So
and you know what it is? And I can't take credit for this thought. I really have to give credit to the original person who put this thought in my head, which is Santi Zapp on YouTube. He's a very entertaining wrestling. He has a podcast. He posts daily content. Anyway, he started off by talking about the road to SummerSlam, and I feel like there's been a build-up lately that feels like a road to WrestleMania. And I think he's correct. I think I'm correct in my assumption. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think they're sort of trying to bring SummerSlam back to how it used to be and make it a little bit bigger, because it did kind of lose its value over the years, just a little bit. They call it the hottest show of the summer. I think it's right at that 6-month mark, just about. Not exactly, but just about halfway through the year. So I think it's cool to have that sort of be the other big event. Obviously, the Royal Rumble is sort of what kicks off the lead up to WrestleMania. So I think it's cool that they're doing big things with both of those events, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what new heights they can take SummerSlam to as well.
Oh yeah, and isn't it funny that the Royal Rumble and the King and Queen of the Ring kicked off both? So let's get into this road to SummerSlam happening right now. First and foremost, let's address Seth Rollins. Made what seems like an impossible return way too soon based on all the injuries that got reported and everything. So his first return since his showing at WrestleMania, where he lost his title to Drew McIntyre, and he lost to, well, he didn't lose, but he got super punched by Roman Reigns and ultimately hit with the chair. Such a great part in WrestleMania. He finally returned to the ring and immediately got thrown into the World Heavyweight title picture. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's cool. Seth Rollins is probably aside from maybe CM Punk, I would say he's probably the biggest draw over there on Raw right now. People love him. That pop was nuts when he came back. Like you said, it was way early. I didn't think he'd be back this soon. I do kind of wish they'd have waited a little bit, but with how, and I think you probably agree with this, I feel that run for Damian as champion is already starting to get a little stale for me. I think, like you said, he's kind of a placeholder champion, and he's really great at what he does, don't get me wrong. Nothing but respect for him, but I think Seth Rollins is much needed fuel to the fire for that heavyweight title picture.
Yeah, and what are we predicting to happen at? It's at not SummerSlam actually. It's at Money in the Bank, right?
Yep, it's at Money in the Bank.
So what are we predicting to happen? Because I think this is our last show before Money in the Bank.
You know, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for this because we're at a point in Damian's reign where I wouldn't be surprised if he lost in any given match. But I don't see a road for Seth Rollins to hold the title unless they're trying to save it for a feud with CM Punk or something like that. But I feel like that would be way down the line. I don't know. Could we maybe see a cash-in the same night? I don't know. It'll be interesting.
I for one, actually, I kind of am leaning towards a Seth victory here, only to set up a heel versus face match at SummerSlam between Seth and Gunther, which is going to be a stellar match. But again, this could be any of them, Seth versus Gunther or Drew versus Gunther.
Yeah, I forgot all about Gunther getting the title shot after Money in the Bank.
Yeah, no, it's a guarantee. So I'm leaning towards Seth winning here, and it's nothing. And I said Drew, I meant Damian. It's nothing against Damian Priest, but I've never seen a feat where Damian could defeat Seth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Barring any interference, but this could be leading up to Damian getting cast out of the Judgment Day.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I think that they actually put up, Seth said if he loses, he leaves the Judgment Day.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. That adds a little extra something to it.
And then, as if this Raw wasn't already good with the re-return of Seth Rollins, we got a historic debut, the most cinematic debut we've ever seen of the Wyatt Six.
Yep.
How do we feel about the Wyatt Six?
Man, the lead up was very long, and I feel like a lot of people started to feel like it was dragging a little bit with all the QR codes and the little hints they were giving every week. This debut was well worth the lead up. I think they absolutely killed it, and I think the Wyatt Six killed everybody backstage. We saw nothing but carnage and bodies sprawled all over the backstage area. They had that mysterious fog all over the place. Chad Gable looked like he got assassinated. Somehow he was cleared and returned a week later, but still seems to be a target of that faction in one way or another. For those that don't know, Wyatt Six, obviously a big tribute to Bray Wyatt, who we lost, about 2 years ago now? A year and a half, something like that?
Bray Wyatt was about a year ago, wasn't it?
I can't even remember the truth.
Because he participated... No, it was... Because he participated 2 years ago in that Money in the Bank match.
Yeah.
No, I mean, at a Royal Rumble against LA Knight.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, he didn't participate in WrestleMania, so just about a year and a half ago, yeah.
Yeah, still feels surreal. One of the most creative minds we've ever seen in WWE. Obviously, he did the whole thing with Uncle Howdy when he came back. Uncle Howdy, his brother, Bo Dallas, is now the leader of the Wyatt Six. Again, a tribute to him. Cool that they're using some talent that they haven't utilized really in a while to sort of form that stable. I think they picked the perfect people for the perfect roles. Nikki Cross looks great. Absolutely terrifying. I think it was cool that they gave Michael Cole an ominous tape to play, and then there was a vignette of a dark, mysterious conversation between Uncle Howdy and Bo Dallas. We haven't seen Bo Dallas's face in quite a while, so it was cool that they were sort of breaking the fourth wall. Uncle Howdy straight up asked Bo Dallas how it felt when his brother died. And I saw some clips from the audience, of the audience's live reaction, and it was captivating, very captivating segment. So I think they're absolutely killing this, and I'm excited to see what Bo Dallas and the rest of that faction can do with the Wyatt Six. I've been super excited for that since they started teasing it. So
yeah, no, that is all fair. My next question would be, how did we feel about the vignette? But you've already covered that. So I think that this was as I said prior, this is the most cinematic debut I've ever seen from anybody. They worked really hard, and poor Chad, who died and was apparently revived into this. And then I don't know what this whole thing surrounding Chad is, and I really want to see more. I know there's a lot of rumors out there that it's doing with Chad losing his family, and they're going to start targeting other people who lost their family. That seems like a really great idea. What I can tell you is that I'm excited to see what happens next, and it makes me want to tune into Raw every week.
Yep.
And then that following night, the next night, we saw a very weird situation with the Battle Royale on NXT, where a Joe Hendry showed up in a Forbidden Door style Battle Royale, and he promptly got eliminated. How do we feel about that?
Yeah, he was in a NXT #1 Contenders Battle Royale, and they said that there might be some surprise faces from other brands. A couple TNA wrestlers showed up there. Obviously, we saw Jordan Grace show up all the way back at the Royal Rumble. Naomi showed up. She, I think, is now with the WWE again.
Yeah.
So it's cool that TNA is working with WWE and NXT in particular. Obviously, the biggest name that showed up, like you said, was Joe Hendry, who's arguably the most over guy in TNA right now. Huge pop from the crowd. Very disappointing quick elimination. I missed the elimination because I looked away for a second and I came back and everybody was talking about how disappointed they were online. Despite that, I think he still overshadowed the winner, who was NXT star Javon Evans won that. And I think despite that, Joe Hendry was still the breakout star.
I think this is a start of something very big for Joe Hendry in NXT.
Yeah, I think it was followed by, I don't know if you saw this, a couple days later, it was followed by several NXT superstars, like Tatum Paxley, for example, some others in there. They invaded TNA Impact. They invaded a taping of that. I love a good invasion angle. That's pretty cool to see between two different companies. Didn't think we'd ever see that. Definitely wouldn't see it under Vince's reign. It's another cool thing that Triple H is doing. And it appears to be WWE's answer to AEW's Forbidden Door idea with New Japan, which is actually currently happening right now as we're recording this. So I'm excited to see what they do with that. I think it's really cool that they're working with each other. Opens up a world of possibilities.
No, I absolutely agree with you. To really round this out, let's talk about Sami Zayn and Bron Breakker real quick, as this was a confirmed match at Money in the Bank. Could this be the end of Sami Zayn's reign, or the beginning of one of Bron Breakker's first important feuds? What are we predicting to happen at Money in the Bank, and how do we feel about this match?
Well, I think this match is going to be an absolute banger. I think Sami and Bron's styles mesh very well with each other. I think both of them sort of have that intense striker style. Bron Breakker has obviously got that crazy speed and power. Sami's a little bit more of a striker, but he's still kind of got that same aura to his style. I think it'll be a really, really good match. It could end up stealing the show. I don't think Sami's going to lose his title. I don't think they're going to put a strap on Bron yet. I think they're going to continue to build him for one of the main titles later down the line.
Yeah, I think there might be some outside interference in this match to prevent Bron Breakker from actually winning this title. But I think they're going to put Bron Breakker over Sami regardless. Bron Breakker's going to absolutely destroy Sami. And I think it's going to come down to elimination or some type of count out or something. Just the way Sami Zayn matches end, I guess.
How crazy would it be if Ricochet came out?
I would pop.
Yeah, that'd be pretty nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know how likely that is with his whole contract situation, but that'd be pretty cool because obviously Bron Breakker did take him out, and it's rumored to be a free agent here soon, but we talked about that on the last show, but that'd be cool, something like that. Just completely surprised everybody.
Yeah. And for a final wrestling topic that I have, Friday showed a very important debut of the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu. And very quickly, he was given one of the most impactful debuts I've ever seen. He took out 3 of the top baby faces on SmackDown, in Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and Randy Orton. And then this little Bloodline 2.0 proceeded on this Friday to take out one of the and solidify themselves. They took out Bloodline advocate Paul Heyman. How do we feel about this?
Yeah, I felt like they were leading to something with Paul Heyman, turning on Paul Heyman in some way or another. Paul Heyman at that acknowledgement ceremony with bootleg Tribal Chief Solo over there refused to acknowledge Solo as the Tribal Chief. So Solo hit him with a Samoan spike, put him through a table. Actually, all of them put him through a table. Crazy bump for a 58-year-old Paul Heyman to be taken. So shout out to Paul Heyman for taking that bump. But intense stuff. I'm excited to see where it goes. I feel like that sort of kicks off the anticipation for Roman's return. Andrew, I got a hot take.
You got a hot take.
We got to talk about it.
Okay.
I'm going to get into a red hot take right here, right now.
Mike's red hot.
Mike's red hot. UFC 303 was last night. Alex Pereira won his match. Ended up defeating a guy whose name I cannot pronounce. I'm going to be honest with you.
Jiri. Oh, yeah.
I'm sure everybody that watches the UFC knows who it is, right? I can't pronounce it. I should have done my research on how to pronounce it. Ended up defeating a top contender with a head kick, a pretty nasty head kick in the main event. But the reason I bring this up is because, do you know whose spot that was originally supposed to be, Andrew?
I feel like I've heard his name before, like Conor McGregor or something.
Yeah, you may have heard of him. Originally, that was going to be Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. And that match ended up replacing it because Conor McGregor pulled out of the fight a couple weeks before the fight, maybe a week or two. Here's my hot take. It's time for Conor McGregor to hang it up. Conor McGregor has spent more time typing Twitter posts in the past several years than he has in the octagon, and he's still so delusional as to believe that he's the greatest fighter alive.
Holy shit.
He's lost 3 of his last 4 of his last 7. Khabib folded him like an omelet, made him tap. Dustin put him to sleep in the first match. In the rematch, he broke his leg and sent him to the hospital. He's not even in the conversation anymore for the greatest of this generation. He's just not. His time has passed, and I think it eats him up inside. I think to make matters worse, it took him 2 years to finally fight Michael Chandler. Andrew, do you know when they set this fight up?
When did they set this fight up?
June of 2022.
What? 2 years ago?
Michael Chandler has put everything on hold to wait for this fight with Conor McGregor because they were both on the reality show, The Ultimate Fighter, where 2 coaches have 2 teams. They go up against each other. Michael Chandler's team wiped the floor with Conor McGregor's team so bad that they had to change the whole structure of the show. Michael Chandler has patiently waited for 2 years to fight Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor pulled out because he allegedly broke his pinky toe. Now, I get it. You want to be 100% for each fight.
I don't know. As someone who suffered through a grueling turf toe injury recently, I get where McGregor's coming from.
Yeah, listen. I know
you get put in a tow bar or something.
Yeah, I'm sure it's painful. I'm sure foot stomps, if that were to happen, would absolutely mess him up. I know it would be difficult, and if I was in a situation, I'd probably pull out too. That aside,
you never pull out. I can edit that out.
No, don't. Just leave it in. Just leave it in. This is all raw. I'm sure Michael Chandler wants that too because he wants the best version of Conor McGregor, but you cannot still be talking shit on Twitter after all this has gone down. You barely won any fights in the past few years. As big of a fan as I've been of Conor McGregor the last few years, I think it's over for him, and I think he knows it. And I'm not going to deny what he's done for the sport. He's absolutely transcended the sport. He's a hell of a businessman. But give it a rest. Come on. The truth is, whenever Michael Chandler does fight Conor McGregor, if that ever happens, I truly hope that Michael Chandler gets his moment and absolutely whoops that washed-up, has-been delusional shell of a man into retirement, because I'm tired of seeing him talk about how good he is when he's barely won anything in the last 5-6 years. If Conor loses this fight, I don't see a path for him to continue fighting, and I think he knows that, and I think that's probably why that broken toe made him pull out. And is it a smart move? Yeah, sure. If you feel like that's a potential for you to lose the fight, sure, it's a smart move. But it also makes you a little bitch. All jokes aside, listen, I got a lot of respect for Conor. He's given us a lot of really great memories. Again, he's transcended the sport. Despite all that, at what point is enough enough? I think it's time to face reality. The reality is, this is it for Conor McGregor. Also, quick shout out to Dan Ige, who filled in for an ill-fallen Brian Ortego and Ortega and went into decision against Diego Lopez on 4 hours' notice. This man stepped up. Conor McGregor should take notes. So shout out to Dan Ige and fuck Conor McGregor.
Oh my God, that is a hot take, and I am uploading this. And this is Mike we're talking about, not Andrew. Mike.
Yeah, this does not represent the Free State Sports Podcast. This was all Mike Simpson.
So I'm not signing any contracts to fight with McGregor.
Listen, I don't want to. Will Conor McGregor knock me out in 3 seconds? Absolutely. I don't want any beef with the man. I'm just saying what everybody's thinking. I mean, let's be real.
From a pure entertainment standpoint, McGregor dropped the ball here.
He did. Listen, he's done it all. He's been a 2-division champion. Now he's holding fighters up. I feel bad for Michael Chandler. I'm tired of seeing Conor talk shit. It's time to give it a rest. That's all I got.
All right. Well, that was a really great end note, and I didn't write an outro.